Hello and welcome to the See Through podcast, brought to you by Herman's Auctioneers and Rat Mines. Today we're joined by Sean Atmos, who's here to talk to us about his work and his practice and what he has coming up in the next few months. So thanks a million for coming in, Sean.
No worries, thanks for having me.
So look, start off nice and easy. Tell me a little bit about you.
So my name's Sean. I'm working out of a studio in Portobello. I'm working there for about a year or two. Kind of been bouncing around studios for the past few years. From Donaghmede originally, but I lived in East Wall like most of my life, and now I live in Crumlin.
Bounce around studio seems to be something that a lot of artists do. It's a struggle at the moment, I think, for everyone to get space. Is that something you found hard?
I haven't really found it too hard getting spaces. It's more holding spaces that can accommodate spray painting. Like I work with spray paint, so studios in Dublin are quite small, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I definitely wouldn't want to work in a studio next to someone who spray paints all day, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate to have the space I have now, so it's great.
So talk to me a little bit about when you first became interested in art. Like, how did that happen?
I mean, like, I got into art, like, I feel like from, like, being a baby, really. Like, I remember my nana showing me how to write. Like, she obviously, like, done, like, the dotted line of the letters, and I remember tracing it at the fireplace. And then I think I always liked to draw. And then my mum was a photographer. Well, she is a photographer. But yeah, she brought me to Kings of Concrete when I was about 8, I think. I think I was about 8 years old, yeah. And yeah, I just fell in love with graffiti. Like, you know what I mean? I remember getting everyone to sign my book and going home and then tracing everyone else's tags, and yeah, just was like hooked. Kind of like stopped playing football, just started drawing all the time, you know what I mean? And yeah, from then just obsessed. And then I think, you know, as I got older, I think I hit around 14 or 15, you know, you're doing art in school, you start learning about, you know, different artists and different movements, and you start like kind of applying that to maybe what you're doing outside of school. So you're doing graffiti every weekend, you know, it started kind of going, I'm going to look at this a bit differently. I'm maybe not going to try and paint something that looks like it was drawn by someone in America in the 80s. I'm going to start trying to make something that looks a bit like it's painted from Germany or you know, Australia, something a bit more bubbly, flowy. I think that was probably the, like, when your mind starts to kind of mature with graffiti a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with painting something that looks traditional. It's an unbelievable style, but yeah, I think like definitely some of the best things we've seen are the people that start kind of applying different things to graffiti and start pushing it forward a little bit.
So when you were in school, did you do art for your leaving cert? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had a really good relationship with my art teacher, actually.
That's magic.
Like I didn't really go to school too much. Like I lost a friend of mine in like the last 2 years of school, so I hated going to school. But art was like the only thing I'd really go in for.
Yeah.
Had a good friend called Nemo, and yeah, both of us would kind of like always make sure we went in for art and have cups of tea with my art teacher and stuff. It was great. I mean, like when I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I got into IDT for fine art, and I think I got into NCAD or somewhere like that. But I don't know, something was kind of telling me like no, I didn't feel ready to sit down and study for 3 or 4 years or however long. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing really. I'd done like a PLC and didn't really like it. And then I remember meeting my art teacher for a coffee in a pub in Baldoyle where my school was. And I just remember being like, I've no idea what to do. Like my head is so cloudy, like I don't really know what direction I'm going. And I remember she like got like the salt and pepper and she poured it all out on the table, and she got the coaster and she started kind of moving it around. She was like, this is you for the past 5 or 6 years. She, you know, scraped the salt and pepper. She's like, you know, this is what you've been doing. You've been painting and all. So it's like you've left school and now you don't know what to do. But you've always been doing it. She's like, just, you need to get yourself a studio and you need to keep painting. You need to try and make your own schedule. Like you need to paint Monday to Friday. And I was just like, oh my God, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. You know, I've been painting outside of school. I've been painting instead of going to school. If I don't want to go to college, I just really need to just put the head down and paint. So I very stupidly got a studio in the building where the Eastwell Rave was, so I got absolutely nothing done. Nothing worth showing for anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But like it was fun. It was definitely a nice, funny little introduction to kind of going, okay, what is it I want to paint, and getting used to maybe like that responsibility of being an
Yeah.
artist, or the irresponsibility in that case.
Yeah.
But and then from there, a couple of friends of mine were setting up. They'd already set up a company. They'd set up a new company to paint murals, and they were like, "Do you want to work with us? We need an extra person to paint." And that was kind of the start of moving what I was doing into the direction of being like a commercial artist as well as
Yeah.
just like an artist in general.
Yeah. Well, shout out to that art teacher. I think.
Yeah, Siobhan
Yeah.
Hyde,
Yeah.
great woman, great artist as well.
Yeah.
But
Gave you massive advice.
yeah, I remember as well. And another really good thing she done was I had done my practical in the leaving, but I didn't want to come back in for the theory.
Yeah.
She knew well I wasn't going to come back in. Like she saw me with my jacket on and stuff, and she handed me an envelope. My school was near a beach. She handed me an envelope, just like, I need you to come back 15 minutes before the theory, and I want there to be shells and sand in that envelope.
Yeah.
So cause she knew I was real stressed and in a fowler.
Yeah.
She's like, make sure that you go to the beach, clear your head, come back, and I did, and I done really really well in the leave. So another really really amazing thing she done. So
Absolutely magic. That's
yeah.
incredible. Like
Yeah.
incredible. It's
Yeah.
such it's like a powerful thing to
Mm.
to guide a child like that. That's amazing. In terms of like bombing and tagging people and stuff like that, or not people, but bombing and tagging. When did that start for you? When did you start doing that?
Way earlier. Like I think it was around. It started way earlier and it fizzled out way earlier as well. Like I mean, I started doing graffiti at a really young age. Like I think I started doing like track size and stuff whenever I was about 12 or 13 or something like that with a couple of friends of mine, and then that started taking that really seriously. Like yeah, up until I was about 16, 17, pretty much when drinking and stuff started, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When that kind of takes over and you start getting more into being out with people
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that sort of thing, I think it became just tagging because you tag on nights out and stuff like that. But yeah, stop taking that kind of seriously. Then later on, you kind of get a second wind, I suppose. You're kind of like, oh yeah, like why did I stop doing that? So I always was way more focused though on like style, developing my style. Like I was
Yeah.
definitely a painter who was way more up for, you know, getting up on a Saturday morning,
Mm.
having all my paint ready from the day before, and
Yeah.
spending a day and trying to really
Get something done.
chisel in at a style that I wanted to develop and stuff. But I loved both.
Mm.
I've always grown up with, like, you know, the best writers in the scene, and
Mm.
it's a small city, so it's kind of hard not to grow up with
Yeah,
great
yeah.
writers and stuff. But I've always had the option to kind of bounce between the two. You know what I mean?
Any funny stories? Any risque moments? Think you can share?
There's definitely been some risky moments, but nothing worth sharing.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So you've talked a little bit about how your style has evolved, and obviously you were younger and you were kind of tagging stuff like that. You went through, got great guidance. When do you think your style started to evolve and started to become, I suppose, what the public or what people now would know as that's Sean Atmos's work?
I think because whenever I started working out of a studio, I I never liked when people just painted graffiti for a gallery. I hated it. I still hate it. Like I like it in ways. I like when some of like the Paris writers, like Sayo and Pal Crew, like their stuff translates really well to a gallery because it's so expressive and it's so new. But I really hate it when people, like for example, like a Cope 2 canvas in a gallery. I can't stand that. It's disgraceful. But I loved when people brought something that kind of touches on graffiti and has elements of graffiti, as inspired by graffiti, or maybe where they've come from, the style that they've come from, and they kind of recontextualize it and put it in a gallery. I think that's worth being in a gallery because it actually is you know, it's open for interpretation. It's not just like something that's taken from a shutter and placed in a gallery, which just sucks. You know what I mean? Like, just leave it there and stop trying to turn it into something it's not. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I think there's a reach
Yeah.
to monetize that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it loses its purpose and its place.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that influence has kind of always been there. So I started like I was always really like even the graffiti I painted in my like late teens was always very like geometric. It was I remember because I designed a lot of it on CAD because I was learning that in school.
Yeah,
So a
yeah.
lot of it was very like loads of horizontal and vertical lines, a couple of angled lines, which I've always held on to. Like I still kind of work with that. Um, but then I started. I think when I left school, I started really like I loved typography.
Yeah.
I loved I love typography. I still do. Just design in general, like you know what I mean. Then I started like trying to bring curves into things and start trying to complement and break all these really like harsh horizontal and vertical lines with curves, and then I started being like, oh, it doesn't actually have to look like graffiti letters. You can move it in a completely new way. I don't have to do an outline. I don't have to do a highlight. There doesn't necessarily need to be a gradient. There doesn't need to be any of these nods to graffiti, and that's been done a million times before me. I was definitely inspired by a lot of people who've gone before me, like Delta and stuff like that. They'd be pioneers of really just going right. We have the fundamentals, but let's move this in a completely new direction. Like I loved those, like you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
So that I think that's kind of been a massive influence on what I paint now.
You had a collab with H&M.
Mm.
Talk to me about that. How did that come about?
It kind of came about like obviously a lot of projects land on a lot of people's tables, so I was really grateful that they chose me for that project. And it kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of play with new like we actually designed a couple of different bits for that project that never actually went ahead, but it gave me an opportunity to kind of look into sculpture and kind of like figure out how I can kind of involve my work in different areas. But yeah, it was great. I mean, like we done like a print release and we done an installation in the store. It's also my first time kind of like speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
Which I think was really good for confidence, and yeah, it was a really beneficial project. It's funny because I think there's a bit of a taboo around like commercial projects and artists, but I actually found it really beneficial and helped me get tons of work done outside of the studio and stuff. So yeah, it was great.
I think people sometimes envisage commercial projects as like an artist selling out or an artist like trying to pass their art into like a mass-produced transition, but people forget that there's an experience there for obviously for you as an artist and as a person. So yeah, that's definitely something that I don't think everyone would consider. Obviously, graffiti massive influence, and you were saying when really did you turn and say, right, okay, I need to bring this into a gallery setting or bring it into a more painterly setting?
So I've been working with friends on like commercial murals. We had done quite a lot of creative murals as well, but when you're trying to keep a business afloat, tends to, and also when you finish painting tons of commercial murals, you're quite exhausted. You don't really want to get up on a Sunday and paint something else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which we did, but hated a lot of it.
Yeah, big time.
But it was only when I really left. It was actually, no, it was towards the end of that I had started trying to look at it in a different way, and spending more time in the studio. We kind of had a group studio and we go there a lot, but I wasn't. It was an important stage. I hate all the work, but it was definitely like it was definitely necessary for the growth. Like you know what I mean. It was definitely a trial and error stage. But it was only really when I left that business and started working freelance that I really kind of was like, okay, what is it I really want to paint? What is it I want to be known for?
Yeah.
And my friend Al Macer, he gave me a studio as part of like a residency program, and it was the first place on the residency program, and I was like, yeah, man, that'd be unbelievable. Like, you know what I mean? Just having a space to kind of hammer home with what I've been thinking, but not really putting down on paper.
Yeah.
And that was great. I kind of hit the ground running with that. Like I was at a point in my life where I was kind of like trying to give up alcohol and stuff, and I really just was like training loads. The last thing I really needed was like, I need a space and I need to create the work that I kind of want to create. So that was unbelievable, and there was loads of support and guidance with that. It wasn't just a space, you know. I've been mates with all years, so it's been nice to kind of go for coffees with him and kind of really talk about what it is I'm trying to do and get some guidance on that. So that was brilliant, you know. So shout out to him.
Yeah, it kind of took one of my questions off me. Is there someone who's really inspired you to think he's up there?
Massively, yeah. I mean, like, he's kind of paved the way in respect to like his art, but also as a commercial artist as well. He's done some amazing projects, but they stand to him, you know what I mean? Like, he hasn't necessarily done anything, like, he's very in touch with his values as an artist, and that's something that like I take a lot of inspiration from, you know. I think his work is respected in different avenues of being an artist, and that's you know, it's major.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting. It's a massive up for him, but like, he's came up on this podcast more than once. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Like, he's one of the most generous people I've met, you know what I mean? Like, he's given me studio space. It's just like, I'd be broke if I hadn't had that sort of support, you know what I mean? And and also it's just like, you know, he's done it all before, you know what I mean? So he's just kind of passing that torch to younger artists who are also maybe, you know, growing up in a time where it actually is like a really, really expensive field to work in, you know what I mean? So especially with rents and stuff, you know, it's hard to rent a house and a studio. I've done it, and it's broken me, like, you know what I mean?
Big time. It's really, especially in the way the housing crisis at the moment, or the space crisis and crisis in general is. So you have an upcoming exhibition. 9th to the 25th of November. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
So the show is called Alternative Paths. I've been working on it for ages. Like, I mean, I started working on it at the start of the year. The first few months of the year were very much like a trial and error kind of thing. I really didn't want to create my first Irish solo show, because I'd done a show over in Canada in April. But again, I just wanted to kind of go, right, what am I doing? I want to do something completely different not completely different, but just I want to evolve what I've been doing for this show in Dublin. That I feel has been like a long time coming. I was supposed to do it last year, but we just moved it around. It wasn't working. And it's just been like the first few months, just like trying to mess with gradients, which I hadn't messed with before, and trying to mess with like you know, blurring letters into each other and trying to reference motion and stuff. And it was really, really, really enjoyable, but just trying to really hammer home, like, you know, creating those transparencies and trying to reveal new color from two and a new path, really, like. So that's been great. I mean, I hated a lot of the work, and it kind of wrecked my head going home, because you go into the studio with this really like massive energy and optimism, and you go home and you're like, I hated everything I done today. But so necessary. Like, what I've painted for this show has actually come from that, and I'm gonna return to some of the ideas that I messed with. I think I just need to paint them bigger. They look pretty sweet, one or two of them, but they just weren't clean enough to exhibit. Like, I'd like to try and return to that and maybe flesh it out a bit more. But yeah,
something you struggle with, do you think, in terms of like volume, like the size of your work? Do you struggle to bring it down from the mural size or whatever you were doing previously to the paper, or is that something you're comfortable with?
No, not really. Like, I quite like working with the size I work with. I think it's funny. Like, if I go smaller, I don't like it. If I go bigger, it's just I need there to be more going on. So it's actually like a really comfortable size to work with. Definitely with the ideas that I had, I need to paint them so much bigger. They just don't work as small pieces. Like, they're so detailed with trying to blend maybe 15 different colors into each other with spray paint on a canvas that's maybe 50 by 60 centimeters. It's not doable. And then I've messed with airbrush, and I've messed with even oils at one stage throughout the year, and I was like, when I actually break this down and plan how long each of these pieces take, like, I timed one of the days how long I had spent painting a section of the piece, and when I added it up, it was going to take me 3.5 weeks to paint one of the pieces. I was like, right, that's going to give me 6 pieces for the show. So park this, try something new, return to that later. I could paint it bigger on a wall in a day. So, you know, maybe it does just belong on a wall.
So, do you want to talk to me a little bit about your main sources of inspiration? Where did they come from at the moment, at present?
Well, I'll talk about the inspiration behind the show, because that's kind of what I'm working on. So a lot of my time spent out of the studio is just spent training. Like, I'd be massively into running and cycling as well. and yeah, just like fell in love with it. I ran a lot when I was younger, and then stopped for graffiti. So as soon as I kind of started working out of a studio, I was like, I'm gonna make a bit of a return to running, and it was just the best thing I've ever done. Um, and yeah, I mean, like, I've kind of struggled with my mental health and stuff growing up quite a lot. Like I've lost a couple of people to suicide, and that's always kind of been a big part of my life. Like, really trying to, I suppose, discover who you are, or accepting who you are. But training and stuff has been like a massive part of that. It's no wonder so many people throw themselves into endurance sport or something if they're getting over a mental illness or wanting to support others in a mental illness. So that's been a massive inspiration behind the show. I mean, like, I work with typography, so it can be tough working with typography without really feeling like you have anything to say. So a lot of the inspiration behind the show has been almost mantras or words that kind of stick out to me in talks and or in meditation or in training, or podcasts I've listened to with athletes, and even just people around me that I'm inspired by. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's been a massive source of inspiration for me. I'm quite inspired by like the people I'm around as well. Like you know I'm grateful that I'm just around so many like amazing artists and people, like inspired by like Aches and Mesa and stuff, and yeah, just any mates of mine that are like really like kind of true to what they do, and really put the work in, but also like make time for people. Like so many friends who lead really busy, successful lifestyles, but they still like pick up the phone and show some support when you need it and stuff. And like that's amazing. It's something that you can't help but want to do that for someone else when someone does that for you. So I'd be massively inspired by that. And yeah, I mean, the show that I have coming up, to give more narrative to the show, on the Saturday the 11th of November, we're doing a discussion with an athlete called Sean O'Hara, who also struggled with his mental health, and he ran 30 marathons in 30 days, which is a enormous like challenge to undertake. So
30 enormous challenges.
yeah, and I mean, like, he just has a brilliant story and like an amazing journey, and yeah, he has a new challenge coming up where he's going to run the perimeter of Ireland. So yeah, it's just going to be a great way of kind of chatting to him, and maybe showing people someone else's story and what that's kind of done, and what the show that's come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose just supporting that. And then also we're going to chat to another dude called Colin Doolan, who's he has an amazing podcast that I've found amazingly helpful, called what's it called again? Oh, it's called the Sober Mess Podcast. And yeah, just I've sent that podcast to more people than anything, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just been great. He's like an endurance athlete and a life coach, and he's just helped so many people, including myself. So yeah, just massively inspired by himself, and looking forward to chatting to him, and maybe just showing people these two individuals that are, in my opinion, doing so much for men's mental health and also for sport.
And that's on the Saturday the 11th.
That's on Saturday the 11th, yeah.
Very cool. Obviously, I think exercise is something that massively, or sport or engagement in sport is something that massively helps everyone's mental health. I don't think that can be argued for a second. Does your art help you with your mental health, or does it burden you?
It comes in waves. I mean, like, because I made art my full-time job, at times that can be really stressful, but that's not on the art, and that's not on the client. That's on you for not managing that correctly. Like, when I look back at any points in my life where I was like really run down, or at times, like, I remember having to go to a therapist with how stressed I was from painting tons of murals in a week, but like, and like, painting till like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then getting up at 7 to go painting again, and also for very little, for not even paying your rent. So what's the point at the end of the day? Also, you're fulfilling a brief. So at the end of the day, like, you're getting out of bed to have a coffee and paint with your mates, but it's not really doing anything for anyone, really. And that was just a patch that I've learned a lot from. It's like, don't take on a project if you feel it's going to put yourself under pressure, or at least just manage it correctly. You know what I mean? So there's been times when art has, I think, been bad for my mental health, but as I said, I wouldn't really say that that's the art. It's definitely how I've mismanaged how I create art commercially. But I think as a whole, like, I mean, this year, like even now, like working on the show, like it's just such joy to go in and paint every day and go home. It's I feel probably the best I've ever felt in my life. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's to do with given up gargle over the past year, but I mean, like it's definitely changed how painting feels for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think a lot of people can resonate with for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's been great. I mean, like I definitely feel when you have a style that you create and it's you, there's times when you might feel like you want to kind of break that.
Yeah.
And I'm almost looking forward to after the show. Like I have some canvases put aside. Like I stretched unprimed linen for the first time. I want to mess around with like watercolors on that. I do like natural transparencies and stuff like that. Just play around. I don't necessarily know if it's gonna really go anywhere or if it's gonna be good, but I'm looking forward to painting maybe for a few days in between training and just like not uploading anything. It's not for anyone. It's not for any. Just play around for a week or two, almost as recovery from the show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So looking forward to that. I'd love to mess around with like even just like do some live drawing classes and loosen up, because I mean, working with typography, like, you know, it is very rigid and it is very perfect. So it'd be nice to kind of break that and mess around. I feel like that's going to be very good for my mental health.
Big time, yeah. So many Irish artists have travelled, and they've kind of used travel as a source of inspiration, but also as like a learning exercise for themselves. I think you can say that for most of the Irish nation. We generally tend to go away and come home. Is that something you've done?
I haven't really, like a lot of the time, like when I look back, a lot of the time when I went traveling, it was always very like, you know, you're going away with friends, and you know, I never went to college, so I actually never went on any trips where I was going away with a trip that's kind of based around what I'm studying. You know what I mean? Like I've kind of only really gone on trips to like festivals, and I've gone to some amazing galleries, seen some amazing work, but yeah, nothing's been really like impactful on my work as a whole. Like I've been to the Bauhaus, you know what I mean, and that was really cool. Been to like Alvaro Aalto's studio in Helsinki. That was deadly. That was like maybe 2 years ago, and that was I really enjoyed that. I came home and was like, oh my god, I want to be an architect. But yeah, no, that was really really cool. I'd be more drawn to like, I love going and visiting like buildings when I'm away. I think I'd be more for some reason I'm always more drawn to that. I just, when I go away, I don't really like going to a gallery that's just full of people. I don't really like being in galleries full of people in general. So yeah, it's not really like how I plan. Like I like, you know what? I actually am always quite inspired by graffiti when I go away. Obviously, I come home way more like invigorated by seeing like Paris hand styles in Paris, or seeing like fat cap chrome tags in Germany, and seeing like how everybody just uses burner chromes and blacks than, you know, maybe somewhere else. So I'd be way more inspired by that, but I wouldn't necessarily think that influences my work in any way. I think it just makes me feel good. And then I go into the studio feeling good after seeing some cool shit. So yeah.
Do you think your like of buildings and stuff like that, is that because of your linear practice?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think definitely. Especially like, you know, modernist buildings and that use of like primary colors and stuff like that, and then kind of basing all these mid-tones off them. I love all that. I think that's what I really really liked about Alvar Aalto's work as well, was like this mix of all these like natural forms and all these kind of beiges and like these wood tones, and then using like heavy black and red and all these things. I just thought that was like really really cool. I came home being like, I want to make stuff out of wood now, like, you know what I mean?
Is there anything in your creative space, so obviously studio now, but is there anything in your space that you need to have, you couldn't work without?
There's something that I should work with, which is like a wall filtration system that it just costs way too much money to build. And because I don't have like, I'd love to get like a commercial unit with like maybe a 2 or 3 year lease, where like it would actually be worth installing this system. It'd be an investment, and just like really like put the head down, hire an assistant, and get tons of work done in that time and maximize what I do. Otherwise it's useless, because you're punting a couple of grand into building this filtration system, and then you're just, you know what I mean? But I would love to do that. Like, it'd be amazing. It would just, I get so much more work done, and I just be protecting my lungs and my kidneys and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's days when I go into the studio and like I'll sketch everything up, but I'll tape all of the canvases up and try get my painting done before I like go training or
Yeah,
do
yeah.
whatever, and then I'll return when it's not. But you inevitably have to just work in the space where the fumes are, and yeah, it can definitely get pretty bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd love to have that, but at the moment, um, something I definitely can't live without in the studio is a projector.
Okay.
Projectors are so like time efficient. You know what I mean? It's great. I suppose a laptop as
Yeah, okay.
well. I mean, like I design everything on a laptop.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be crucial.
So you're doing your, let's say, your pre-work, your sketches and stuff. Is that
Yeah,
in CAD?
I'll do drawings on paper and then I'll take photos of them, put them online, and then I'll just like make vectors of each of the shapes and then play around with them. Or I'll just like kind of design letters and then just layer them over each other and start chopping them and moving them around. Designer's nightmare if they saw my approach, like just tons of things being dragged off the.
Off
Yeah, yeah,
the workspace.
yeah.
Very interesting. In terms now going forward, next couple of months, any exhibitions you're looking forward to, or any events in Dublin you're looking forward to that don't have to be art related?
I'm going to a talk in the National Concert Hall with an explorer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I'm really looking forward to that. He like walked across Antarctica and stuff, and he's lost fingers, and I think he may have lost an eye doing Everest, and then he went back and done it again.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's gonna be coming up on the 1st or the 2nd of November. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to my show, of course, and the events that follow it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
they're gonna be great. Be a nice way to kind of like cap off this body of work and move into something new, or continue it on and just not work on stuff for anything in particular.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, don't know. I mean, like I kind of stopped going to gigs and stuff like that. They're just way too expensive. Like, I went to one or two during the summer, and there's this new gold circle thing that just wrecks my head. Like, you know what I mean? But where I was standing at Blur, there's just tons of these like absolute super fans,
Yeah.
and they're young and they can't afford a gold circle ticket, and there's
Mm.
people in this gold circle who are just standing around catching up with each other, chatting while this banging gig is on. I just thought like this is ridiculous. They've monetized enjoying a gig.
Yeah,
Like, they've monetized being closer to the stage, and this is just insane. So yeah, I was kind of like pretty pissed off about that. But yeah, I mean, like there isn't really a whole lot coming up that I'm like massively excited for, but at the same time, like kind of stop drinking, and that kind of makes you less motivated to kind of go out. You're not kind of looking for something to go
Yeah,
out
yeah.
for. You're being very selective about what
Mm.
it is you kind of want to go for. So,
Big time.
but I'm hoping some like really good gigs and stuff get announced in the new year, because yeah, I haven't been to like a really like mind blowing gig in quite a
Yeah.
while. Lankum actually, if they're playing anytime soon, I'd love
Yeah,
to
yeah.
go see them. That was like incredible gig. Yeah.
You do have a recovery session event coming up after the 11th, don't you?
Yeah, so on the Sunday that follows, I can't remember what date that is. I think it's the 19th.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna do a recovery yoga session with Flow State in the gallery. I'm gonna talk about my work and the journey and the process behind the show for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and yeah, just another way of like kind of meeting people and connecting with people. I like as necessary social media is for your growth. Whether you own a business or whether you're an artist or whether you're a personal trainer or yoga instructor, that's all well and good. But I just find it really, really like hard to connect with people, or even just like putting stuff online. Like I find it really like a massive disconnect almost. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just gonna be really cool to actually like meet people through your show, and make an actual connection with them. And
Sure.
the amount of times of someone buys your work and you chat to them for like a minute,
Yeah.
and then you're pulled aside or whatever, and
Yeah.
I just find there's some massive disconnect with that. It's always nice to kind of chat to people who come to see your work and maybe figure out why they're coming to see your work. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
it's gonna be cool. And also, like, I've always wanted to blend athletics and mindfulness, two things that I spend like tons of my time doing with artwork. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be nice. I can't wait to see where that goes as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd love to especially working commercially. Like I'd love to start working with like sports tech companies and start maybe even going back to some of the stuff I would have painted in my old company, but just fleshing that out further and maybe applying that to sport. That's something that's a goal of mine. I'd love to try and embrace a bit more in 2024. Yeah.
Great. What are the greatest challenges facing artists today? And I say artists, I'll caveat that with, I mean all types of artists. So street artists, doesn't matter what. What do you think is, what are the challenges for them?
Um, God, I hope I'm doing artists a favour speaking for artists as a whole here. I hope I don't leave anything crucial out. But I mean, myself, I'm pretty grateful what I have at the minute. Like I have a studio space, not a lot of people have that. Um, you know, I have an abundance of paint that I've collected over the years, and you know, everything's quite close to my gaff, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm pretty sorted in that regard. But I mean, in terms of like, if I was just doing murals, my life would be a living hell. I mean, I it's a bit of a shit show in terms of like just that whole scene. Like, I mean, it's really difficult to create murals, mainly because a lot of the murals that were painted for years are just commercial murals.
Yeah.
But there is also quite a lot of hoops to jump through to paint a non-commercial mural, and I think that whole thing needs to be looked at because it can be quite difficult as a commercial artist to try and get non-commercial funding for a mural that's non-advertisement. So it's this kind of weird loophole or this kind of weird circle of like, you know, if you're a commercial artist, you can't get funding to paint a public mural, but then how do you fund your own public mural? By doing commercial work. So it's just this kind of weird loop that a muralist can get quite caught up in. So I think that needs to be looked at. I think it definitely needs to be taken into consideration. But it has been done. I think it just needs a bit more framework.
Do you think the bureaucracy around it is imposed purposely?
How do you mean?
Do you think like it's made complicated or it's made difficult to stop murals from being produced?
I don't think so because like the council have supported tons of murals.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They don't have a thing against muralists. I feel maybe there's a lack of understanding. Like it's becoming quite a business, obviously around the world, but particularly in Dublin. There's a lot of artists that go, oh, you know what, I could paint my work bigger. There's a lot of artists that now in the past 2 years are wanting to start painting murals who maybe weren't painting murals maybe like 5 or 6 years ago when everyone else was. And that's good. But that also, we need more walls to accommodate that. And we need a more of a framework and a process behind if you want to paint a mural. Because, I mean, what happens then is you're going to have artists who want to create murals who can't fund it themselves because their rents and their gaffs and their studios are way too high. And they want to paint a mural, so they'll go down the commercial route, and then suddenly, which is what happens, everybody becomes this commercial muralist, and then that's why we can't get all of these amazing public projects that happen. So it's this kind of lack of understanding. It's like we need to kind of fund public murals more so that all of the spaces that are allocated for murals aren't advertisements.
Yeah.
And there isn't, like, there's some great artwork, like, you know, Holly Pereira done a mural recently down on Dame Street, and that space has been used tons. I mean, like, there's loads. Like, there's Mason murals. There's James Early murals down by the docks. Now, certain murals are obviously, like, commercially funded, but they're still public artworks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then, in my opinion, that's brilliant because for a commercial entity to fund a mural and not make you put their logo on it and, make you fulfill some sort of brief. Like, I mean, that's what you want. You don't, like, who wants to see some logo being, like, you know, repeated and chopped and changed for the sake of it being an artwork that involves the thing? Just fund an art piece. That's what people want. So yeah, I think in short, I'd love to see more spaces allocated to public artwork, and I'd love to see a bit more freedom involved in the funding of that. Like, I think a lot of murals it actually, like, I've been painting murals for like 7 years now, and I can probably count on my hand how many public murals I've done as opposed to commercial ones. And the whole process, it just puts me off it. I actually at the moment would be way more into painting a public mural and then removing it myself 2 weeks later, because once you upload a photo, the mural's gone anyway. Because I just don't want to have to deal with this whole process of like, oh, but would you want to fulfill this brief, or would you paint something to do with the area? It's like, what about the artists out there? Like, for example, like if you're an artist that paints subjective artwork, unbelievable. You've such an advantage. You can paint portraits of somebody from the area. You can paint. You can reference anything really. Like, you know what I mean. You're gonna throw your hand to a brief pretty well. But let's say you're not, and there's a ton of muralists that do paint on objective artwork. Like, what's that really saying to them? How is somebody who's leaving college and maybe wants to paint something a bit more expressive, like how are they supposed to fulfill a brief where they're asked to paint James Joyce, which happens all the time? Like, that's something I'd love to see changed. I think just for more freedom for artists, like, you know what I mean? And also, like, just remember, these murals don't have to be there forever. Like, I wouldn't want to paint a mural that stays there for 20 years. That's a misconception as well. A lot of artists I know wouldn't want their mural there for 20 years.
No.
So having spaces that can change, at the end of every year, or maybe by the season, you know what I mean? Like, just have all these kind of revolving murals, even if they're obviously we have this problem of paintings not being allowed on marked buildings and stuff like that, and protected structures. But I mean, protected structures are knocked down all the time, or they're reused and repurposed into these new buildings. So I definitely think that might be just an excuse that's kind of thrown out there. But I mean, yeah, I have this unbelievable image of like Dublin in like 30 years, where like we move Dublin Port and we build all these new buildings, and artists work with architects to create these amazing spaces where these revolving murals can be done, and they can be funded with like, artist studios and all these places where events can be ran, and like that brings money into an area. Like a mural by an amazing artist, by a world famous artist on a building, drives the cost of that building up. So I just think like it's something that they should really look at. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot involved here. There's a lot to be. Everybody can benefit from this. You know what I mean? I just think it's something that I think with a bit more planning can be embraced.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we're gonna do a quick fire round now.
Cool.
Favorite color?
Like this color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Burnt orange.
Well, yeah, burnt orange. It's Mars orange and spray paint. I love it.
There you go, Mars orange.
It always finds its way into a piece of mine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very good. Canvas or mural?
Canvas.
Interesting.
It's warmer.
Right, you're going to the desert island. You bring 3 things with you. Just 3. All the usual stuff is provided for. So, food, medicine, water, all that. What do you bring with you?
I don't know. A bike. Pair of running shoes.
Okay.
A loved one.
I think that's actually the first time someone's actually said they'd bring a loved one with them. What's the most treasured work that you've produced?
God, I don't know. It's funny. Like, I think because I've made painting my job, you get really, really good at not being attached to pretty much anything you painted. I actually painted a piece recently that somebody bought, and it was the first piece in years that I really, really loved, and I almost wanted to keep it. So I'd probably say that piece.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll probably forget about that now in a couple of weeks. I think I painted a mural in Temple Bar before for a charity, and I remember like a woman reaching out to me and talking about how much it meant to her. That really meant something to me, just because, again, that connection through painting.
What was the charity? Do you remember?
I can't remember. I've honestly no idea. No. I think it might have even just been like Troker or something like that. But yeah, I just remember like somebody reaching out and talking about it, and there's a lot of people stopping, and like when they realised what the mural was for, even I was kind of taken aback. I was like, whoa, I didn't think this would really. You could just get so used to painting something and then moving on, or it being removed, or just hating the outcome or whatever, that was quite cool. Yeah, and I was actually happy with the piece as well. So.
Spend one day with an artist, Irish artist,
Irish artist,
dead or alive. Who would it be?
don't know. It's pretty useless to want to go with a dead artist because, like, if I say an Irish artist, there's a chance I could actually go spend a day with that Irish artist
Oh, yeah,
by putting it out there. So I really love Peter Monaghan's work.
okay, yeah.
I'd love to actually meet the dude and see his process. It's
Yeah.
slick. It's unbelievable. Saw a couple of his pieces recently in Gormley's and just blown away by it. I love that. It's like that kind of that light and space movement with like this kind of new feel to it, like using wood and stuff. So yeah, I love that.
If you had a death row meal, what would it be?
Death row meal, carvery. Absolutely.
What's on it?
Everything. Absolutely everything. I love a carvery.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, look, thanks a million for coming on. The See Through podcast has been brought to you by Herman's Auctioneers, and you can find out more about Herman's on their Instagram and also at herman.ie. If we want to find out about you, Sean, where do we go?
So Sean Atmos on Instagram.
Yeah.
SeanAtmos.ie is my website. Yeah, they're kind of the only two handles I use.
Cool. Do you want to do a shout out there for when the exhibition dates are?
Yep, so the exhibition is at Tell You Now on the 9th of November. It'll run for 2 weeks. The first event that we're doing is on the 11th with a time to be announced. And the second event we're doing is on Sunday the 19th, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Super.
Cool.
Well, Sean,
Thanks for having us. Sound.